Utter devastation as airstrikes rain down on Gaza today. A resident with a single fire extinguisher forlornly tries to tackle the huge blaze. This is the Jabalia refugee camp. The man filming says the building was a supermarket and that dozens were killed here. Anyone and everyone is trying to help the injured. Using whatever they can find. This is one of the most densely populated places in the world. Israel insists it's only targeting militants, but ordinary people are paying an awful price. In the hospital, dead bodies line the floor. The pain is overwhelming. Bodies continue to arrive, many just children. May God be with our young ones, says this woman. We raised them with love, but didn't get to see them grow. Across southern Israel, a massive military presence has been building up. Preparations, it seems, for a major and deadly ground offensive. At the entrance to the town of Sidero, soldiers are on high alert. 3 days after the assault by Hamas militants began, Israeli forces have continued battling small groups of militants infiltrating from Gaza, responsible for massacring and abducting hundreds of people. Over there you can see what's left of this small town's police station. Hamas gunmen had taken it over and the Israelis used a bulldozer to flush them out, and you can see just how serious a firefight it was. I mean, there's bullet casings strewn all across the floor here, and over on the side you can see the state that these cars are in. 3 days after it began, this assault is not yet completely over. Throughout the morning, not far from here, there's been further clashes between militants and soldiers. Overhead, rockets fired from Gaza send us scrambling for cover. As sirens ring out, soldiers hit the floor too. Most rockets are intercepted by the Iron Dome defense system. But some get through, with cities across Israel struck today. In Sidero, the streets are deserted. We find just one local shop still open. I've lived here for 26 years, the owner tells us. We've seen rockets before, but nothing like this. Everyone here is crying. The world needs to know the people here did nothing wrong. The old people and the children they've kidnapped should be freed. The ones who did this are terrorists. There's anger at how this awful attack could be allowed to happen. An argument erupts. The left wing are responsible, shouts one man. But who's in charge, yells another. It's a right-wing government. They're to blame. Roads here are still littered with abandoned cars. In a corner, the dead body of a Hamas gunman lies unclaimed. Elsewhere, reminders of the lives so brutally and viciously cut short by the militants. Amit, a 22-year-old who loves singing, was living in a small community close to the border. Working as a paramedic, she stayed there as gunmen entered.
She always wanted to be friends. And this is after they went in the clinic.
She sent that to you?
In the group, in the family group. And this was when she didn't answer after this, and then this is when I called her, I phoned her, and then she told me they shot her in the legs.
When gunmen attacked, Amit had the chance to flee to her safe room. Instead, she went to help the injured. She kept in touch with her family throughout.
She's letting us know that there is terrorists in the kibbutz. And there is many injuries and many dead people. She's saying that. And we all very concerned about her, and she's asking, where is the military? Where is the military? All over again in the messages. And we tell her, they're coming. It can't be true. They're on their way. Help is on the way. We're trying to keep her calm, and we're trying to encourage her.
We call to the police.
We call the police, yes.
No answers.
We're telling them, she's in the clinic in Kibbutz Be'eri, go help her, go get her out of there. In 1:50 p.m., she's writing us again that terrorists are coming, and she's telling us, this time I don't think I'm going to make it. And she's telling us, please be strong if something happens to me. She knows how much we love her. She's our youngest sister. She's the princess of the family. She knew it will tear us apart. She knew it, so she told us to be strong.
The family don't know what happened to Amit next, whether she was taken hostage or killed. Funerals have been taking place for the dead. This is the worst attack on Israeli civilians in the country's history. Unbearable grief in Gaza too. They're also burying their dead. Two people divided by so much, both racked with suffering.
And Sikandar joins me now. Sikandar.
Well, the Israeli military say there are no longer any ongoing clashes between them and Palestinian militants within Israeli territory, though there could still be gunmen at large, they say. There are still large numbers of rockets being fired out from the Gaza Strip into Israel, though. One line of thinking is that Israel was waiting to secure its border towns before sending ground troops into Gaza. An operation like that could well be a protracted affair with significant Israeli military casualties and far greater Palestinian civilian casualties. Already we've seen Israel rowing back from its usual policy of alerting residents in Gaza when an airstrike is going to take place, saying that's no longer always going to be the case. Of course, in the past, even when that was officially the policy, there were very high numbers of ordinary Gazans killed every time that there was a flare-up of this kind. Now, the Israeli military offensive is made all the more complicated, though, by the presence in Gaza of Israeli hostages, and Hamas have threatened that every time there's an unannounced airstrike, they're going to kill an Israeli captive. One final note, we've just heard from the Israeli family that you saw in our report. They say they've just been told that their sister is dead.
Sikandar, thanks very much indeed. Sikandar Kamani reporting there. Now, in the last few minutes, multiple bombardments could be heard inside the Gaza Strip. You can see burning buildings littering the skyline. Okay, well, let's talk now to Makaima Abu Sada. He's in Gaza, where he is a professor of politics at Al-Azhar University. Thank you very much for coming on the program, Professor, under these very difficult circumstances for you. Can you describe what it's like tonight to be inside the Gaza Strip?
Good evening. I have to very much say that I have never seen massive bombing like the bombing that I have seen this evening. For a number of hours, we have been in Gaza City, all over the Gaza Strip, under massive Israeli bombardment. This is the most intensive, most horrible bombing I have ever seen in my life. Today, things were ugly. The Israeli army bombed a mosque in the beach camp in west of Gaza. and also they bombed a local market in the Jabalia refugee camp, where that led to the death of 60 Palestinians in that local market. All of them very much are Palestinian civilians, women, children, and elderly. Right now, just as you are talking to me, you can see I have no electricity in my home. The Israelis decided to cut off electricity. Very much I'm relying on a home battery, which very much died down, and things are going really ugly here. And we are expecting, as a result of this Israeli decision to cut off electricity, that we will have a very serious problem with potable water, with the sewage system, with food and basic necessities. It's something we've never seen. And as Netanyahu said today, the results of this battle or this war will probably change the face of the Middle East. So we are expecting things to get even much worse than it is right now.
But despite all the hardships that you've had in the Gaza Strip over years, do you also understand that what's happening to you now is as a direct result of Hamas's attack on Israel on Saturday?
I totally understand that, but you also have to understand that the Palestinians have been subjected to expulsion from their homeland 75 years ago. We have been subjected to ugly occupation for the past 55 years. We have been subjected to siege and Israeli blockade here in Gaza for the past 16 years. Things were not normal in order to not to expect what Hamas has done. Now, whatever things were really ugly on the other side of the border, I understand that. I have seen images that are really very tough images for the Israelis. But you also have to put yourself on the Palestinian side and understand that the Palestinians have been ill-treated by the Israelis. And since the coming of this Israeli right-wing government, things have turned ugly into all over the Palestinian territories. This year alone, 250 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank by the Israeli army and Israeli settlers. And we were even expecting Israel to go forward with settlement expansion, creeping annexation of the West Bank, desecration of Muslim holy sites in East Jerusalem. So let's also not to forget what the Israeli right-wing government has done to the Palestinian over the past 9 months.
Okay, but very briefly, how do you see this ending? I mean, the cycle of violence will just continue, won't it, and get even worse. How do you see this ending?
That is a very good question. I do expect that things will go on for a number of days, maybe weeks. It will be very tough, things that we have never seen in our life. But that means it's the responsibility of the international community to intervene and impose a ceasefire on both sides and try to negotiate a settlement that keeps citizens and civilians out of this current cycle of violence.
All right. Okay. Dr. Abu Sada, Professor Abu Sada, thank you very much indeed. And stay safe.
Thank you.
Desperation and anger is growing among the many families with loved ones who are missing, feared to be held hostage in Gaza. Earlier, I spoke to Yossi Schneider. 6 of his relatives, 6, among them his cousin Shiri Bibis and her 9-month-old baby, are thought to have been captured and taken to Gaza. Tell us about the 6 family members that are missing right now. Who are they and how old are they?
Shiri, she's my cousin. She's about 30 years old. The 2 little children, Ariel is 4 years old and Kfir is 9 months old, that have been kidnapped and been held by Hamas. Her husband was at home with her, and we don't know what his situation, if he's been kidnapped also, if he's injured, if he's dead. My aunt Margit, she's about 60 years old, and her husband Yossi has also been kidnapped from Nir Oz. My aunt is very sick. She needs a life-saving medicine, and without it, she won't survive. We don't know if they are injured. We don't know anything about them. We just know that Hamas hold them right now.
What was your reaction to when you saw the video?
The videos that we're getting, and it's like a nightmare. It's a bad dreams. It's like a scene in a movie. You cannot believe that it's in real life. I'm telling you, we're on Monday right now. I'm just feeling right now that I'm waking up and starting to understand exactly what happened.
And to have a 9-month-old baby taken
without his diaper, without his baby food, without anything, we're very concerned about his life. I'm crossing my finger that they didn't separate between him and his mother.
There are some in the government who want to go in and occupy the Gaza Strip again, but then there are 130, perhaps more hostages, including your family, being held by Hamas. What do you think they should do?
They choose to kill. They choose to ruin. They choose to demolish, to destroy Israel. So I don't care what's going to happen to us right now. I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry for all the children in Gaza. I'm sorry for all the innocent people in Gaza. But they have only one place to...
But what about the... Right, but what about the children in your family? What about your own family? Are you worried that if there's another incursion into Gaza, that your family might get killed?
Who said that they are safe right now? Who are we talking with? I'm not saying that Israel should wait. Israel should act right now and make sure that they won't get to Tel Aviv and to Jerusalem and every other places in Israel. That's what they need to do.
And Yossi, do you think that you will see your family alive again at home?
I'm not sure about the men's, but I hope at least Shiri and the children and Margit, I hope that at least they will come back. About the men's, I'm not sure that we can even dream about it.
But do you have any sympathy for the Palestinian civilians inside the Gaza Strip who've also been killed, have died, over the years because of Israeli airstrikes and have nothing to do with Hamas?
Nothing to do with Hamas? How can you say that? Hamas shooting fire rockets.
Well, not all of them support Hamas. Not all of them support Hamas.
What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? To keep holding our hands, to sit tight and wait and pray that they won't hurt us? The only reason until now that there is not thousands, hundreds of thousands of Israelis that have been dead is because we have the Iron Dome and because we have the IDF. Otherwise, we will not exist right now. Stop defending Gaza. Stop defending them. We don't want to eat civilians. I'm sorry for the children in Gaza. And the civilian in Gaza yesterday on Saturday, and in Judah and Samaria, and in Jerusalem, went out and celebrate the things that happened right now in Israel. They celebrated. So I have no mercy for them right now. I don't want to eat them. I don't want to hurt them, but I have no mercy for them.
Yossi Schneider, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, more details are emerging of the attack on the Supernova Music Festival, in which it's thought more than 260 people died. We've been trying to piece together what happened after Hamas fighters arrived, paragliding over the border from Gaza. Many of those who were there are still missing, leaving their families desperate for news and fearing the worst. Kieran Moodley has this report and a warning. It contains upsetting images.
To see hundreds of bodies, cars on the roads riddled with bullets, it was a scene from a horror movie.
This is not how a festival should end. No encore, just the aftermath of people trying, wanting to get out. More than 260 didn't. The Supernova Festival was likely audible in Gaza, just 3 miles from the fence that separates it from Israel. It took place just to the northeast of Kibbutz Rim. It was one of the first targets for Hamas. An emergency medic told local media there were around 3,000 people at the festival. The music began late on Friday evening. The thuds of beats, the cries of joy. Thuds and cries that would soon take on a whole new meaning. At around 6:30 a.m. on Saturday, dots in the sky, Hamas militants paragliding in from Gaza. People dance on. But then the music stops and rockets are heard. Festival goers make their way to their vehicles, ready to drive to safety, some still seemingly unaware of the threat. People's cars were parked to the north and east of the main pavilion, along the road which heads north towards Sderot and south towards Kibbutz Rim. But as people reach their vehicles, they come under heavy fire from the militants. Some even spoke of cars with corpses on top of them blocking the road. Unable to drive out, many run across this field to the east and try to hide in trees, bushes. Some even play dead. There was some limited festival security here. Footage shows them attempting to fight past the attackers and allow a safe route out. This was the scene elsewhere. Bullets flying as people run across an open field, their destination unknown, just anywhere far away.
Then we were starting getting messages of people who were hiding inside the trash cans just to get out of the terrorists. And I heard like crazy stories of my friends saying, "We inside the trash, they are next to us, we hear our voices, we hearing how they're killing our friends in the next bush."
This dashcam footage from near the festival is from 9:23 a.m, around 3 hours after the first signs of an attack. A gunman drags a hostage away, his t-shirt bloodied. Another figure can be seen hiding just beneath the boot of the car, appearing to play dead. An attacker shoots them point blank. Reports suggest more than 260 dead, 30 missing, friends and families waiting, worrying.
If you have 3,000 people who are running by foot in the field and getting shot by, like ducks, there's a lot of missing places. And there's people we know that are safe. There are people we know who don't know nothing. And there are people we know by sure that are all murdered or getting kidnapped.
This is Noah Agamani screaming in terror. She and her boyfriend went to the festival together. They didn't leave together. Separated and taken to Gaza, where she was last seen in this hostage video filmed by her captors. Her father spoke to Israeli media.
What can I say? My whole life, since she was born, I have done my best to protect and to hug her and to support and love her. And now, in this difficult moment, to at least comfort her.
We're told that 2 days later there are still bodies in the area as rescue and recovery operations continue in towns and villages throughout the south. The full story of this deadliest of days only just emerging. Countless other tales of terror to come. Lives still on the line.
Israel is, of course, no stranger to crises on its streets and its borders. Apart from the wars of 1948, 67 and 1973, there were the bus bombs during the Second Intifada and what seemed like the constant spectre of terror at the time. But for almost 2 decades, Israel has largely managed to contain any potential threat from the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, with high walls, acres of barbed wire and swarms of surveillance drones. But none of that protected it on Saturday morning. And another warning, images in my report are distressing. Jaffa Street, Jerusalem. It should be congested with shoppers and traffic and life. But we found it deserted at lunchtime today. And then we heard this. The howl of air raid sirens. The sense of panic, followed by unnerving thuds. You can hear and feel the sound of explosions in the distance. Now, whether this is the Iron Dome shooting down missiles from Gaza or whether it's actually missiles impacting the city, we don't really know. But the silence otherwise that you see on these streets, that you feel now, that sense of terror, that sense of shock, of vulnerability, that is something that this country has not experienced until October the 7th. Sirens or bugles of war are all the rage now. Israelis often tell you that they are surrounded by enemies, but they haven't felt surrounded for a long time. On Saturday morning, all that changed.
Everybody that is a combat soldier is right now in the front line, getting ready to retaliate at Gaza. Everybody that is not, every civilian organization, they are here, driving, buying, shipping, organizing, cooking. It doesn't really matter. The Israeli society is one force, and we will demolish you.
Hamas declared war against Israel.
Doom scrolling has taken on a new meaning. Social media feeds filled with outrage at the brutality Hamas unleashed.
Slaughtering innocent Israelis.
If you're Americans and want to compare this to something in American history, then this could be a 9/11 and a Pearl Harbor wrapped into one.
Along with grief for their dead, much of the national anger is focused on the missing. Dozens of hostages are being held in Gaza. Their families will stop at nothing to see them freed and returned unharmed. And they expect the same of their Prime Minister. Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli Defense Force face questions over whether the surprise attack could have been prevented. How do they plan to save the hostages? How could such a catastrophic security failure happen in their own backyard? A ground invasion of Gaza may answer some of those questions and deflect others for now. Reservists and tanks are fronting up for duty. 300,000 men and women have been called up. The biggest mobilization in Israel's history. Israel is a country of compulsory military service, where every citizen has served or will serve. And back in Jerusalem, they cover the body of Colonel Roy Yosef with earth. He died fighting Hamas militants after the music festival massacre. Grief and fury are a powerful brew for vengeance, but will that break the cycle of violence? Or take it to a new level? And an update. In the last few minutes, the authorities in Gaza have announced that the death toll there has increased yet again to 687. Now, the unprecedented attack by Hamas has badly shaken Israel's faith in their military and intelligence services. Many are blaming Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Among them, one of his predecessors, Ehud Olmert, who led the country during its 22-day war on Gaza in late 2008 and early 2009. He told me earlier that the failure to see the assault coming was down to the arrogance of the current government. His words. I began by asking him about his reaction to the attack on Saturday.
They have caught us in a complete surprise. It is similar to 9/11, and we suffered a terrible blow. There is no question about it. This was a shock for everyone, but we are pulling ourselves together, and in a short while, we'll hit back, and it will be very painful. This is brutal, and it will have to be answered, and the answer will be very decisive. There is no question about it.
The intelligence failures, the security failures. As someone who used to be the Prime Minister of this country, how surprised were you by what many people are regarding as a catastrophic failure of what Israel is supposed to be very, very good at?
I think that this is a tragic mistake which repeats itself after exactly 50 years after the similar situation in the Yom Kippur War in 1973. So the intelligence worked. We saw all their preparations, but we thought that they are trying to fool us, and we didn't take it seriously. And this is, in my mind, unfortunately, this is the outcome of the arrogance of the present government.
So you blame Prime Minister Netanyahu, ultimately?
Well, look, I'm not right now in the mood of carrying on the fight that I have with Netanyahu. Prime Minister is the ultimate responsible for everything that happens or doesn't happen. And he is responsible particularly because he has taken into his cabinet as partners chauvinistic, messianic, brutal terrorists that are members of the cabinet, are in charge of national security and in charge of security in the territories. So he took the worst possible guys that unfortunately defames the reputation of the state of Israel, not just inside Israel, but across the world.
So if you were still Prime Minister today, would you order an occupation of the Gaza Strip, knowing that there are 130 or perhaps more Israeli hostages held inside?
God forbid, no, I wouldn't order occupation of Gaza. I would have ordered war against the terrorist organizations in order to destroy them once and for all. And at the same time, I would have, well, actually, you know, it's ridiculous. I wouldn't have never reached that point because I would have made peace with Abu Mazen long before. And I would have negotiated with the Palestinian Authority, and I would have created a momentum in the international arena that there is something that is worth fighting for, because we are really ready to make peace and compromise and pull out from territories and provide the Palestinians with all their rights for self-determination where they deserve it.
Mr. Olmert, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal today claiming that they've discovered evidence that Iran, the Revolutionary Guard of Iran, helped Hamas plan this operation. Do you believe that? Is that, plausible? And if it's true, what should be done about it?
Number one, it's true. I think so. Iran is an enemy of Israel. Iran is the inspirator of Hamas and of Hezbollah. There is no question about it. It's a long and difficult encounter. They are smart, they are sophisticated, they are strong. In good times, when we are not arrogant, we are smarter and stronger. So we'll have to pull ourselves together and to address ourselves to this. And I don't suggest that we will attack Iran. We can do things, we will do things, and the Iranians will regret very much that they have been part of this plan.
Mr. Olmert, thank you very much indeed. Ehud Olmert.
Thank you very much.
But I'm joined now by Ahmed Mouna, who's from a prominent Arab family in East Jerusalem and a leading literary figure on that part of the city. Ahmed, thank you very much for coming on the roof here in somewhat inclement weather now. I mean, Hamas is threatening to execute a hostage for every unannounced strike against a Palestinian house in Gaza. Here, the Israeli government is threatening to basically, a complete siege of Gaza. I mean, we've never had it this bad, have we? And this is just going to increase the cycle of violence, surely.
Good evening. It's definitely getting a lot more complicated than before. We have seen other escalations. We have seen Gaza war before that. We have seen Hamas and Israel go into this, but it has never really got this complicated. We're talking about 130 hostages who are in Gaza, who are now at the risk of being executed.
What would you say to Hamas if they were listening now to this interview? What would you say to them?
It's a difficult question. Look, this conflict has been going on for 75 years. Hamas has been ruling Gaza for the last, say, 15, 16 years. Gaza has been under siege for 15 years. From one side, Hamas has a population that is governing. From another side, it also wants to create some sort of pressure to try and come out with a solution.
But surely the right response is stop executing people. Don't execute hostages.
For sure. I mean, innocent people should not die in this war and should not die in any war.
But no, you live, in East Jerusalem. You know the Palestinian Authority, but you don't represent them. But they are, caught between two stools here, aren't they? They're supposed to be the moderate force, but they don't have much of a mandate. They're not popular.
Over the course of this conflict, also more things have become relevant and other things have become irrelevant. The Palestinian Authority that signed the peace agreement with the State of Israel in 1993 accepted a two-state solution, which would have been an accepted solution at the time, is now failing to happen because neither party could stick to it. We came to a situation today where the Palestinian Authority is less and less and less relevant. People don't talk about the young people today are not interested in the two-state solution. They're not interested to talk about what Fatah party had subscribed to 30 years ago. It's too old. It's beyond us.
Is the two-state solution dead?
30 years later, when the two-state solution was not being able to be done 30 years later, today for sure it's off the table. In the minds of young Palestinians, it's off the table.
The next generation. That of course is very problematic. Is the real problem here that you have Hamas, in Hamas you have a government, a movement that basically doesn't believe that Israel should exist, and amongst many in the current Israeli government, there are those who don't think there should be a Palestinian state. So there's a one-state solution on both sides. One is Jewish and one is Palestinians.
Certainly, the solutions that are being proposed are not acceptable solutions. You know, one Israeli state for the settlers, that's not a good solution. One Palestinian state only for Palestinians, that's not a good solution. The two-state solution is dead. Of course, we have to come up with new solutions. New solution maybe is actually a shared state, but who is willing to talk about this today? Talking about a one-state solution is basically political suicide for politicians. It's not accepted. It's not what the international community is ready to accept. But it's probably what the people on the ground, the average person on the ground, will accept.
Is there an international broker who can be seen as an honest broker by both sides? Is there anyone out there who can help you come to the table?
Sadly, we have seen over the course of this conflict also that brokers have not been neutral in this conflict. There has been biased brokers. Nonetheless, there was an agreement that was signed, nonetheless, 30 years ago. Today, it's very hard to see an honest broker to this conflict. But I would also say that this is a Palestinian-Israeli conflict. People at the end of the day who have to solve this conflict are the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Let's hope you can at some stage. Ahmed Wouna, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Krish in London. Krish, over to you.
Thank you, Matt. Now, Western leaders have been quick to offer their support to Israel, backing its right to defend itself following the attack. As we reported earlier, an EU commissioner announced that aid to Palestinians had been suspended, but that's now being contradicted. To explain, our international editor, Lindsay Hilson, is with me. What's happened?
It's a bit confusing. An EU commissioner, he's a Hungarian, said that the nearly 700 million euros of aid to the Palestinians was going to be suspended and they would review it. But Ireland, Luxembourg, Belgium, various other countries have said that that is not a decision. There's a meeting of the European foreign ministers tomorrow when they will decide what to do. But it should be said that none of that aid goes to Hamas. That is aid which goes to Palestinians. A lot of it is humanitarian aid, and it will only make life worse for ordinary Palestinians if it gets suspended.
Benjamin Netanyahu says he's going to change the Middle East in his response. What does the rest of the Middle East think?
Well, the Middle East is already changing and it's becoming dangerous. There have been clashes up on the Lebanese border with Israel. Israel has been attacking Hezbollah watchtowers. 4 members of Hezbollah have been killed. They have been responding with fire. So that is another flashpoint or potentially another front. But then there are Middle Eastern countries which are trying to intervene to stop this. The Turkish leader Erdogan, he's been on the phone to people, both to Hamas and to the Israelis, the Egyptians as well. And Qatar has come up with a very concrete suggestion. There are 36 Palestinian women and children being held in Israeli jails. They are suggesting that they should be swapped for female Israeli hostages who are being held in Gaza at the moment. I think the other thing that is going on is that Israel has been trying to basically leapfrog the Palestinians to make peace with other Arab countries, and they've been trying to make a deal with Saudi Arabia. What this shows is that is not possible. The Palestinians exist. Israel is not at war with Saudi Arabia, and any kind of deal which the Americans want cannot be done unless there is some kind of settlement with the Palestinians.
Lindsay Hilson, thank you. Well, let's look at the reaction here in the UK to the events in Israel and Gaza. Let's go to our senior political correspondent, Paul McNamara, who's at Westminster.
Yeah, Krish, the message here is unequivocal support for Israel, utter condemnation of Hamas. We're told the government is, quote, poised to offer support to Israel as required. And events are being monitored really closely here. This afternoon, the Prime Minister chaired a Cobra meeting with the Foreign Secretary, the Home Secretary, key security advisors. And part of the problem they're grappling with here is trying to work out just how many Brits are caught up in this. I was told by an official this afternoon that more than 10 are feared dead or missing. 2 of those British citizens have been named today, Nathaniel Young and Bernard Cowan. The fear is that number will rise. The Prime Minister says he's working very closely with his Israeli counterparts to establish the status of any British nationals on the ground. But the number is huge. The Foreign Office estimate that there are 50 to 60,000 either British nationals or dual nationals in Israel and Gaza. The vast majority of them are in Israel. There's no plans for a mass evacuation, but the message is get in touch with the British Embassy. For those in Gaza, though, the message from the Foreign Secretary is try and make your way to the Egyptian border, but that is by no means safe. This afternoon we discovered that 2 people trapped in Gaza are the parents-in-law of the Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf. They live in Dundee. They travelled to Gaza to visit a sick, elderly relative. Mr. Yousaf says they're trapped in Gaza. He says him and his wife are sick with the worry that they may not make it through the night.
Paul McNamara in Westminster. Well, with me here in the studio now is Israel's ambassador to the UK, Zippy Hotovely. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello.
Benjamin Netanyahu says this war will deliver revenge, that will change the Middle East. So what is the aim?
To defend our people. Over 1,000 Israelis got butchered, killed, brutally, barbarically. We're talking about children being executed in front of their parents. We're talking about young women being taken away and kidnapped to Gaza. Those are sights we haven't seen. And I will quote my president. The president said today something everyone should think about. He said, since the Holocaust, there was never a day in our history that so many Jews got killed in one day.
Yes, and
so
that's a
this
fact.
is horrific.
But
you
this,
can't.
what is the war aim?
Krishnan, 1,000 Jews got killed.
Yeah,
you can't just go with fine. It's not fine.
No, I didn't say fine.
It's absolutely not fine.
I said that is a fact.
And it's a very sad fact. It's a very sad fact.
What I'm trying to get to is what is the war aim? You know,
to protect
the
our
IDF is
people.
comparing this to 9/11, to Pearl Harbor. Are you talking about removing Hamas? Are you talking about a ground war? Is that where this is going?
We are going to a serious war that will make sure that there won't stay any infrastructure of Hamas that will give them the abilities to harm our people. It's a war to protect.
So the aim is to remove the Hamas administration of Gaza, totally.
I'm not speaking tactically. I'm speaking about the main goal as a government. The government's goal is to make sure those atrocities will never be back again inside of Israel. And think about it. Cities and towns were occupied for hours. And think about the fact that for hours those terrorists walked from one living room to another.
So how can you do that without removing Hamas? You're not being blunt about what the aim is.
As you know,
you're not saying.
I'm the ambassador. I'm the ambassador. My job is to make sure the international community supports Israel this time. And I want to tell you, the community here in Britain is supporting Israel. I just came back from a rally of 2,000 people waving with Israel's flags, understanding those kind of atrocities cannot happen. And Foreign Secretary Cleverly showed solidarity and came today to our embassy and he said, we will support you and we will help as much as you need, because he understands this is really fighting for the freedom of the people of Israel.
But there are also many voices expressing concern, including the UN Secretary General, about the level of the response and the impact on civilians in Gaza. You are now cutting off electricity, food, water to the civilians in Gaza. That is collective punishment. That is illegal under international law.
So actually, I knew you were going to ask that, and I checked the international law, and as you know, I'm a jurist. According to the international law, Gaza is not occupied by Israel because the Geneva Convention has only one condition. Let me just finish with this.
We're not talking about occupation, we're talking about the siege.
No, it's really important because the reason from 2005, Israel is not occupied. And it means basically we don't have effective control in the Gaza Strip. And unfortunately, we saw the price of not having any effective control, as you've seen in the last 48 hours. And the meaning of that is very simple. Gaza gets supplies from Egypt. Israel shouldn't and mustn't supply electricity to the Gaza Strip. This is not part of our obligations. And think about it. Do you think Britain should have supplied to Germany any supplies if you had a shared border? Does that make sense to you that you have an enemy during a war and you need to supply something to this enemy?
But you're going to starve civilians. That's the impact.
That's your mistake. It's Hamas that is to be blamed on anything that will happen to civilians.
That's an arguable point. I'm not arguing about that.
I totally think that the international community should say to Hamas, please, you need to make sure all those kidnapped young people and elderly people will be released.
So your position is that Egypt should take all the burden, are you? And presumably allow...
My position is that we don't have any obligation according to international law because we're not occupiers in Gaza.
But the only other country that can is Egypt, which has the other border. So are you saying the Palestinian people are now reliant on Egypt?
All I'm saying is that at the moment we are in a war. We're in a war because over 1,000 Israelis were killed brutally. And this is our duty to make sure our people will be safe. And we're doing what every country would have done in such a situation. And you can't imagine a situation where you supply supplies to your enemy while they're using it to create rockets, to fire on on your cities.
Well, I'm talking about the civilian population. So,
of course, obviously, but Hamas, as you know, doesn't care about the civilians in Gaza. Unfortunately, they don't care about them, and they're abusing the power they have in order to create more terrorism instead of taking care of hospitals and people in Gaza.
The Israeli government is also saying that the people in Gaza must go. Where do they go?
First of all, we are alerting every single building that we are harming, and this is something that doesn't happen.
But that doesn't work. I mean, I've seen that myself.
First of all,
you often hit the wrong building.
We're not obligated to do that, and we do that from humanitarian reasons, and we don't want any civilian casualties.
Yeah, but you still kill. I mean, if you look at the 2014
But Hamas, from the other hand, is targeting only children and elders. Krishna, I want to be very...
But where should they go?
Krishna, can I say something? I want to be here very, very personal, because in the last 48 hours, while people in Israel were seeing sights we've never seen in my country. I live in my country and I experienced terror attacks. I've experienced horrible things, but nothing like that happened. That terrorists walked in and butchered family after family. We're talking about families that their children being killed.
And now you're in a situation where Hamas is saying hostages will be killed if there are attacks without warnings.
This is the duty of Hamas, to take care of its people. Our duty is to take care of our people. And as a country, Israel must defend those young people that at the moment are kidnapped in Hamas' hands. And you need to demand from Hamas to release them.
Ambassador, thank you very much indeed for coming in tonight.